you should play Suzerain. Hey kids, have you ever wanted to try your hand at running a country and becoming an instrumental figure during its most crucial hour?
That's really not too bad.
All right.
Do you want to become an incorruptible champion of democratic and economic reform after decades of strongman single-party rule? What about making decisions to shape your nation into a self-sufficient, jingoistic, independent state that's propped up by consolidation of your personal power into a cult of personality?
Oh, boy!
If any of that arouses your curiosity even slightly, then look no further than Suzerain, a highly intriguing political sim by Torpor Games. At its core, Suzerain is a choose-your-own-adventure style visual novel that uses choices and consequences style gameplay in order to weave a highly intricate political drama wherein you play as the focal point, naturally. If Pentiment is the video game equivalent of The Name of the Rose, then Suzerain is The West Wing, complete with a wide cast of supporting characters with their own rounded personalities that voice their opinions about the choices that you make regularly. Except, they're not American. Instead, Suzerain is set in the fictional country of Swordland, a country strategically situated around several other nations with their own varying political and economic ideologies. This is important because these countries are simultaneously resources and threats, and how you deal with them does have some far-reaching consequences on your presidency, your international reputation, and your economy. The continent that you and your neighbors are in also seems to be sandwiched in between two global superpowers representing the combating communist and capitalist ideologies engaged in an ongoing Cold War. Sound familiar? You can sort of begin to see here that the references that Suzerain makes to real-world history aren't very subtle at all. To the best of my knowledge, Swordland is essentially a surrogate for modern Turkey, as many of the important dates regarding the nation's developments and even the people you interact with reflect real historical events and figures. It's no accident that both Swordland and the Republic of Turkey were both established in 1923, that the idealistic and charismatic army colonel who preceded you and gradually became a despot is a stand-in for Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Or that the Markian Empire sounds an awful lot like a fictionalized Ottoman Empire. There are a lot of other references to people, organizations, and historical developments beyond your own borders, and even a passing familiarity of Cold War history will offer you some insight into their allegorical usage in-game. The gameplay, being a visual novel and all, doesn't really evolve beyond the act of reading text boxes and responding as you see fit. However, the game does keep a running tally of every decision you make in order to highlight the consequences of said choices. Suzerain also keeps things interesting by measuring a number of variables that will be in flux as you make certain decisions. Specifically, these are Swordland's economic health, the state budget, and your own personal finances. As you may guess, some of your choices will affect and be affected by these statistics, as they can trigger particular events during some phases of the game. An early goal is to lead your country's economic recovery out of a period of stagnation, so paying attention to these stats is vital, as is paying attention to the current issues that are affecting the state. The game shows you what the current situation in your country is through color-coded issues which have a bearing on your population's happiness, living conditions, social and political freedoms, military standing, and civil unrest, among other things. Your decisions, laws, and budget can all affect these variables, which, too, affects whether or not certain events arise or if you're even successful in dealing with them if or when they do. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. Let's start at the beginning, specifically your character's beginning. You play as Anton Rain, a newly elected third president of the Republic of Swordland. However, before that, you essentially go through a character creation process, wherein you're provided with a few narrative moments and corresponding choices that outline your Swordish origins, your educational background, and your early political life. From here, the game takes off as you begin with your first term in office. What surprises me the most about Suzerain is the depth of its choices and just how far-reaching they are. The game has multiple endings, sure, but the way that the choices develop over time and affect the growth of both your country and you yourself is very satisfying to see. While some decisions have immediate impacts, others that you made hours ago will pop up when you least expect them several turns later, and you'll either kick yourself for not having the proper foresight to see how they would turn out, or no, actually, it's just that. Every choice you make is a mistake. That's what being a president is all about. The game is broken up by a series of turns, and each turn has several different story beats that you follow, make some decisions on, and then move on. Like I said before, decisions made in the early turns loom in the background until they come into fruition much later. A minor example of this is the choice that I was given to buy some shares in a startup company that several turns later turned out to be a very savvy investment. For more immediate developments, the game uses snippets from a number of different newspaper articles to give flavor to your nation's current events, both on a national and on a local level. These choices are made even more impactful by the fact that the game autosaves after every single decision you make, and it's only got one save slot. Each decision, therefore, is final. Now, all of this by itself isn't worth a whole lot if the writing surrounding the decision-making process isn't worthwhile, but I'm very glad to say that Suzerain nails down this aspect too. Dialogue feels balanced without delving too deeply into unnatural exposition, and it's chocked full of details and written descriptions that does a fine job of characterizing each of these individuals. The game's story itself hammers you with a number of different issues, both professional and personal, that coalesce into significant plot points which do well to shed some light on the weight of governance, even if it does sometimes drift into the realm of the dramatic and the pulpy. Still, the story it tells is a decent one, and combined with a number of different approaches you can take to tackling these issues, it gives the game a fairly high degree of replayability. You're not forced to play in any one political ideology on any single playthrough. Your choices are varied, and you are able to approach each decision however you want. Furthermore, the game's lore goes incredibly deep. It hits you with so many references to people, organizations, and other things that it's very easy to get lost in the minutiae, especially because Suzerain doesn't devolve into exposition for exposition's sake. However, the game does include a handy codex that compiles all of this information in one easy-to-access place, along with including hyperlinks to all of this information nested within the game's dialogue itself. I've talked about these systems in the past, and I will forever say that I love this addition to games that use a heavy amount of background information that might not be necessary to what you're doing in the immediacy of gameplay. This is definitely a handy feature to keep track of all the names that are thrown in your face while you're reading. And honestly, what amazes me the most about these is just how detailed these profiles are, such that they sound as if they could easily pass as the introductory paragraphs of a Wikipedia article that give you a brief synopsis about what you're about to read in more detail. They have no in-game purpose other than to flesh out the entities that you interact with and make them feel realistic. I don't need to know what my Minister of Justice's educational background is, since it in no way comes up during gameplay at all, but it's there just because you can tell whoever wrote it got really immersed in the game's lore and couldn't help themselves but to let their creative juices flow. And I get it. I've been there. I love it, honestly. It's not only fun reading, but it's a sort of extra bit of effort that goes a long way into effective world building. As far as political simulations go, Suzerain is definitely one of the better ones. Because of its narrative focus, it isn't quite as open-ended as some of the other ones that I've played, but Suzerain uses that to its strengths and steeps its gameplay in some very tight and concise writing that does a great job of immersing you in its world. It tells a very specific story, but it gives you the tools to alter that story as you see fit. The choices you have to make are plentiful and varied, and the consequences of those choices are heavy-hitting. It's a solid choose-your-own-adventure style game, especially if you're the sort of person who finds its political trappings to be right up your alley. You can find it on the usual distribution platforms for just under $20 Canadian when it's not on sale. I think that the price is a little bit steep for what you get, but it does go on sale regularly and it's well worth it if you can get it for less. It is also on mobile too, if that's more your speed. I haven't tried it on my phone, but I don't think Suzerain would have any issues translating to that platform at all. You can play the demo for free, but the full game costs about $6 Canadian. Check it out if you want to rule Swordland on the go. And all of that is why I think you should play Suzerain.